Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the JB Show. We are so close to hockey season. I am so excited. But there's still so many players not signed. But 2 days ago, something happened. An RFA finally signed. Now, it was Zach Werenski of the Columbus Blue Jackets. I mean, great player. But of the list of RFAs, it was not the one who I thought would sign first. But we're going to talk about it anyways, because you know what? This could be quite an important signing for some teams. Now, Werenski signed a 3-year deal for $15 million. So $5 million AAV. But it's the base salary that makes this contract quite interesting. So no signing bonuses. Base salary $4 million for the first 2 years, and a base salary of $7 million for the very last year. Now, why is that important? Now, when his contract expires at the end of the 2021-2022 season, he'll still be an RFA, and this time he'll be open for a qualifying offer, which basically will be $7 million. And then after that 1 year that the qualifying offer stands for, after that 1 year, he'll be a UFA. So it's interesting to see that the trend for RFAs is going to the shorter term contract. And now obviously there's always going to be outliers. As we saw last week, Clayton Keller signed an 8-year deal for $57.2 million. I'll talk about that one in a different episode, but that's an interesting contract. I talked about it on my other podcast, the 2-on-1 podcast. We kind of went into that. But this one I find interesting more than just the fact that it was a 3-year deal. It's the $5 million. Now, to be honest, everyone thought going into this summer that it would be huge money would be shelled out to all the RFAs. And I'm not going to say this was an underpayment. I think for 3 years, I think you could say this was fair value. But I like that it's 3 years, because it's going to create, when his deal is up, another defender on the Columbus Blue Jacket, his deal will be up too. That player is Seth Jones. Seth Jones, who is making 5.4 for the next 3 years, will be a UFA. Now, first, the Columbus Blue Jackets for the next 3 years will have Seth Jones and Zach Werenski for a combined $10.4 million. That's less than one Drew Doughty. And Jones is 24, and Werenski is 22 years old. I think that's crazy. But when both those players expire, we'll see how much they'll be making. Now, it's interesting to see that they both end on the same year. I'd love to go in the future and see what the Blue Jackets do. Will they have enough cap space to bring both of them back? Will they pick Werenski over Jones simply because they'll still have Werenski's rights for at least another year? I think it depends on how the team does. We know that free agency did not go their way. They probably overpaid for Gustav Nyquist over the next 4 years at 5.5. That the back half of that contract probably won't look good. Their goalie situation really isn't any impressive. Their starting goalie is going to be Jonas Korpisalo. If he reaches his potential, we could see a push for a wild card spot for this team next year, but nothing spectacular. Now, Zach Werenski is a great offensive player. 44 points last year, 11 goals and 33 assists. He was a minus 12. Now, I've been doing quite a bit of reading since I heard about the Werenski deal, and I've heard that it's his defensive game that needs improvement. Now, let's say he comes back the next 3 years and consistently improves on the back end, he could get paid big money. Now, we'll see I can't predict what he's going to get paid in 3 years because there's so many things that I have to take into account. There's obviously the inflation with the salary cap. What is a defender like that being paid at that time? I don't think I would be able to make a proper prediction. Now, why is this important to the RFA market? I don't think this impacts what happens with the forwards because Kyle Connor, Patrick Laine, Matthew Tkachuk, Rantanen, Marner, Braden Point, they're not looking at this contract and saying, you know what, we're going to use that as a comparable. I don't see how this would be a comparable for those players to an extent. Now, someone like Mitch Marner, who apparently wants 3 years at $10 million, Kyle Dubas probably goes in there and says, okay, I'd rather have 2 Zach Werenskis than 1 Mitch Marner. But that's a whole different story, and I'll get into it in a different podcast because the Mitch Marner situation is stressing me out. Now, why is this important to the defensive RFA market? What big RFA? So we got Charlie McAvoy for Boston, Ivan Provorov for Philadelphia, Marcus Pettersson for Pittsburgh, and Brandon Carlo for Boston. Now, the bottom 2 names, sure, you could use Werenski as a comparable, kind of. But it's those first 2 names in McAvoy and Provorov who I look at and say, if I'm Boston or Philadelphia, I walk into negotiation and say, you know what, let's go from there. Let's go from this deal and let's move forward. Let's see what we can get done. Because I think you could say these 3 players are comparables. Now, Charlie McAvoy has a bit of an advantage. He's right-handed, and right-handed defensemen do get paid a little bit more because they're a luxury, and most teams don't have good right-handed defensemen. Now, it's funny that he signs today, or 2 days ago, sorry, because September 3rd, not even a week before Werenski signs, does John Tortorella, Columbus coach, not come out and say some interesting things? Now, I'm going to read you the quote, and I'm going to tell you my opinion on them. This is the quote. I'd be terribly disappointed. I'm not involved in the business part of it, but for a young man to miss 1 minute of camp, and I've said this with the Josh Anderson situation, it disgusts me. That guy there, Werenski, the way he has evolved here, he has shown so much determination, so much more confidence and attention to detail playing defense without it really affecting his offensive game. He has really grown as a player. I just don't want him to miss a beat here. I won't be disappointed. I'll be disgusted. Now, I agree with the idea that, yes, missing training camp is not good. As a Leafs fan, I saw it last year with William Nylander, who literally went until the deadline, December 1st, and signed then. I agree that, yes, okay, it's nice that he's grown as a player, and I like that I think it's important that Tortorella embraces Werenski into the locker room, even though there's all this stuff going on at the time. What I have a problem with is saying that he's disgusted, because it goes past the point that he's disappointed, which means like, yeah, you know what, I'm upset that he's not here. When you say disgusted, and especially when it comes from John Tortorella, who is very vocal, it's like it seems as an insult to Werenski. And I know maybe that's not what he meant by the quote, but that's the perception I got from it. Now, I don't know why it would be something disgusted. He's trying to get the money that he deserves. What I don't like, for me, this is the next step for RFAs. For so many years, contracts were given out based on what the player has already done, not what he will do. This is why you see so many contracts now that are players in their 30 making north of $5 million, but playing like $2-3 million players. And in a salary cap era, with a salary cap set in a hard cap, the salary, any type of cap space is extremely important. So why give the cap space to the older players when you know that with the league moving forward, with the younger players and the more skilled players and the faster players, you give the money to them? I know this. This has to be the craziest summer I've seen with RFAs not signed. There's 17 players still, and it's September 11th. Training camp starts soon. The season starts in less than a month. Kyle Connor, Patrick Laine, Matthew Tkachuk, Brock Besser, Charlie McAvoy, Ivan Provorov, Mikko Rantanen, Travis Konechny, Mitch Marner, Marcus Pettersson, Brandon Carlo, Julius Honka, Anthony D'Angelo, Brendan Lemieux, Braden Point. There's still more players I have to list. This is a crazy summer for RFAs, and I think what they're doing is really going to set the league for the future. Because 10 years ago, you're telling me that after, let's say, Mitch Marner at the age of 21, 22, has a season like this, that you think he can go into negotiations and demand $10 million or whatever the equivalent cap hit percentage would be? I don't think so. Because that's not how players were paid. I think obviously I'd love to see these players start the season with their teams, but at the same time, I'm okay with them pushing the management to set this up. But at the same time, with certain situations, I'm not going to name names, asking for absurd money for low term is not helpful. And you know what that does? That sets the market up in a really bad way. Now, back to Zach Werenski and the Columbus Blue Jackets. What will this team look like next year? Because this was a very important signing. This was basically the last thing they had to do. They still have $10.5 million in cap space. I mean, I don't know if it's going to spend all that money in trades or whatever is a smart idea. Next year they got Josh Anderson, Pierre-Luc Dubois is up. Both their goalies are up. I would be hesitant on spending a lot of money. But what does this team look like next year? Now, I could already tell you the first defensive pairing in Zach Werenski and Seth Jones, which is probably one of the best pairings in the league. If crazy pairing. Now, second pairing, you have Ryan Murray and David Savard. I like David Savard. Ryan Murray, I'm not sure about. But I think that's an okay second pairing. Like, I'm not complaining. Dean Kukin and Marcus Nutivara as your third pairing, sure. And then this is where it gets iffy on the forward. You have Gustav Nyquist, Pierre-Luc Dubois, Cam Atkinson as your first line. Nick Foligno, Alexander Wenberg, and Oliver Bjorkstrand as your second line. Alex Texier, Boone Jenner, and Josh Anderson as your third line. And Marcus Hennekainen, Riley Nash, and Emil Bemstrom as your third line. And then you have Jonas Korpisalo and Elvis Merzlikins as your goalies. Now, I don't have a problem with their defense, and I wouldn't say their forwards are bottom 10. Like, it's probably in the mid-range. What really worries me is Jonas Korpisalo and Elvis. I'm going to call him Elvis. They're both 25. Now, last season, Korpisalo played 27 games, had a 2.95 goals against average, and a 0.897 save percentage. The year before that, 18 games, 3.32 goals against average, and a 8.97 again save percentage. And then it doesn't seem like I'm going back. Okay, yeah, 2015-16, he had a good year. Played 31 games, 2.6 goals against average, and a 920 save percentage. But to be honest, I'm looking at the trend, and since that season, he's just been consistently falling. And he doesn't have the same type of players in front of him. Think about it even if just Panarin re-signed, that changes the forwards. Now, at defense, Zach Werenski and Seth Jones are getting better. But I still have worries about him. Now, for your backup, he's never played in the NHL before. That's what worries me the most. Sure, he's put up good numbers overseas in Europe. I'd have to see him play before. I'd have to see him play in the NHL before making a final decision. I wish they had signed another goalie, and they still could, but it's not really a strong market. I mean, so you got Scott Darling, Chad Johnson, Al Montoya. That's pretty much all the good ones. All the bigger names that's still on the market. I wish they went out and even signed even if it was 800,000, whoever was on the market at the beginning, or traded. Look, last season the Leafs traded a 5th round pick to get Michael Hutchinson, and I know for Columbus they don't have a lot of picks after that. Well, last season they didn't have a lot of picks. They don't have their 2nd and 3rd round for next year. Listen, because you never know with goalies, if Elvis or even Jonas Korpisalo don't work out, they need to go get a goalie. Someone like Michael Hutchinson. Now, you never know. If things turn out well, say the Leafs sign Michael Neuwirth, and listen, their AHL, they got Ian Scott, Joseph Woll, and then they'd have Michael Hutchinson. Call the Leafs. What would they want for Michael Hutchinson? A goalie of that fringe backup goalie. That's who I think the Columbus Jackets should be looking for, because going out and trading your farm for a for a big player like they did last year with Duchesne and kind of what they did with Ryan Dzingel, it's not going to work with this team when your goalies are already when your goalies are kind of subpar. I'd rather them improve on the goalie because I know that they have at least a top four that's kind of strong and a top line that would work. Now, there's an outlier on this team in Alexander Wenberg, who last season there were some questions about him. Will he still be a Columbus Blue Jacket? I think it's kind of known that John Tortorella I don't think he likes to use Wenberg. Is he a player that gets traded? Because you trade him, I mean, what do you get back for him? At this point, based on the situation that's known, I'm not sure. He's 24. He's under contract for the next 4 years at $4.9 million. At this point, he's some type of project. And it sucks saying that because I think he can be a good player in the NHL. 2016-17, he put up 59 points in 80 games. And since then, it's just been going down. So, let's just say the Columbus Blue Jackets have some work to do. They need to figure it out. Because after last season, I think their fans have some expectations for the team, and they lost a great goalie, world-class forward, and Matt Duchesne and Ryan Dzingel, who they brought in through trade, but none of them came back. None of them came back. That's not good. Now, we'll have to see what they do. Now, Zach Werenski, I am very excited, signed. We're going to see how that signing affects the Charlie McAvoy signing, the Ivan Provorov signing, maybe the Marcus Patterson, the Brandon Carlo signings. I hope most of these players are back for training camp because it will be one hell of a season. More young players coming in the league. Let's get nuts. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram and Twitter for more updates. And please make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Thank you.